to the podcast. On this episode of the Failure Guy podcast, my guest is Ivan Castro. Ivan, thank you for joining us and welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Cornell.
Okay, you're so welcome. Glad to have you as my guest. Full disclosure for those of you out there watching or listening in podcast land, Ivan Castro and I are members of a Facebook men's group, the CBX Nation, and we've both been members for more than a year, actually for several years. As those of you who have been listening to the Failure Guy podcast remember, a few episodes ago, I had Tim Gilliland on. He is also a member of this group. And Ivan Castro is just a really great guy, all-around decent fellow, and I'm glad to have him here as my guest. So, Ivan, thank you so much for choosing to join me on the Failure Guy podcast today.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. And as I like to start out with before we get going, because, of course, I know you, but the people listening in podcast land don't, why don't you just give us a little bit about your background, interesting details about yourself, and what brings you here to the Failure Guy podcast today.
Like you say, we've been here in this fitness group for a while. You know, I'm native from Mexico. I've been here in the U.S. for a while now, and I would say something about me like, thanks to this fitness group is when I start being more consistent with exercising and trying to do other things with that excitement when I'm exercising. You know, and after that I get so passionate about it, exercising and build community, and that's have been my main focus since I don't know many years. You know, build community, and I even have a men's group myself, and trying to do my own podcast. You know,
Okay.
and yeah.
Okay, so well, tell us a little bit about your men's group and your podcast. What's it called? How long have you been doing it? Who are the members?
Well, I started doing the men's group here in my neighborhood. You know, I live in Colorado, and I'm still trying to get more people, more men, just get more involved in and meet each other and do great things with the group. You know, and at the same time, I started a podcast called a podcast without the script because I was being kind of spontaneous. You know, whatever I was feeling day by day, and talking about my journey through working out and also learning to deal with my deficit attention or ADHD, and I started doing that as a journal. You know, many people were telling me, "Oh, therapy, so why you don't write a journal?" And for me, it was more easy to make videos,
Mm,
and that's how I started. That's how I started with the podcast. No, I'm just gonna share the videos instead, and that's when the idea started to with the podcast, and I say to
okay.
myself, well, people are liking this, maybe I can just do it as a podcast instead.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's interesting because, as we said, Tim was here a few episodes ago, and his issue is dyslexia. And you are dealing with ADHD. And this is the thing I find interesting. A lot of people, unless you were to tell them, because, I knowing you on the men's group, we both post videos on a regular basis. And so I would not know these things if you didn't tell me. You seem very successful, very articulate. And so, first of all, when we hear terms like dyslexia or ADHD, there's certain concepts that come to mind. Oh, a dyslexic, they can't read. And as Tim shared with us very, very, helpfully and enlighteningly, dyslexia doesn't mean that you can't think or you can't comprehend. It's just a perception thing. Your mind works fine, but your perception of written text and things like that, that's the only challenge. You can understand the thing, it's just the input, is a little scrambled. So similarly, a person with ADHD, it doesn't mean that they can't think. It just means that their brain functions slightly differently than quote unquote, I mean the term now is neurotypical as opposed to neurodivergent. So their brain functions differently, but it still functions. You can still hold down a job and think and carry on a conversation. So but still, here we have this. And first of all, were you always able to, first of all, how long have you realized within yourself that you've been dealing with ADHD? Did you know this from a young age? This is something that came to you as an adult? Say something about that.
Since a young age, maybe 14, 15, 16, I knew that I was driven. I knew that I was struggling, and I didn't know why. I knew that I wasn't the brightest student at the school, and I was struggling. And my parents didn't have any idea about ADHD or something like that, And I found myself when I come to the US, and I was in my 20s, and I went to a therapist. I went to a psychiatric doctor, and that's the one who said, "Oh, you have ADHD," and he explained to me a little more about it, and everything makes sense. Every totally makes sense whatever he was saying. And I used at that time. I remember my struggles during school, and my personal life too. That's how I
Ah,
discovered that about ADHD.
okay, okay. It's interesting because I myself deal with something that's called night terrors or nighttime cataplexy. It's your brain when you go to sleep, it sort of releases chemicals that paralyze your body so you don't move around when you dream. And most people regaining consciousness after sleep and unparalyzing the body are synchronized. In the case of people like me, they're not. So my brain wakes up, but my body is still neurochemically paralyzed. So I can open my eyes, but I can't speak, I can't move, and that can last anywhere from half a minute to 5 or more minutes, where I'm lying there fully conscious and my eyes are open and I can't move a muscle. This has been happening since I was about 9 or 10 years old, and it's
Mm.
a major reason why I'm an insomniac to this day. Because when I was younger, it would happen every night, and it got to the point where I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't
Oh,
know, was I possessed? Were aliens attacking me? I had no idea. I didn't want to tell anyone because I thought they would think I was crazy. And then in my late teens, I was reading just on my own, not even studying it. I was reading a book on psychology, and I saw the term. Then they call it nighttime. What did they call it? Nighttime catalepsy. They called it then.
mm.
And just the fact that it had a name,
Yes.
I was like, it didn't make it any different. It didn't stop happening. But the fact that I wasn't the only one, and it didn't mean that I was broken or deficient or crazy or just some oddball, it made it easier to deal with. And it still happens occasionally now as an adult. And I'm in my 60s now. I'm 63 as of this recording. Now, when it happens, it's just annoying because I know what it is. I'm not paralyzed with the fear of what's happening to me, what's wrong with me. It's like, oh, this again. And then I know that it's just a matter of time. And then eventually my body will catch up with my brain and I'll be able to move. Now, I'm still kind of gasping for air and I sit up because if I'm not careful, I can lapse back into that and loops of that. It'll just keep happening. So I sit up, I get out of bed, I drink a glass of water, I walk around. But just so, similarly, did you find that when you discovered that this thing you were experiencing in your brain had a name, how did that affect you before you even started to deal with the ADHD? Just knowing that there was a name for what you were dealing with, how did that affect you?
I think it was for good because I started making more research and asking more people about it if they feel the same way. I was reading more, understanding more about the condition, and the thing is that when you discover that you have that kind of condition or whatever, it's hard for it takes a while for really live with that, because it's part of you. And I'm still learning how to be living with this condition, because that has been a challenge for me to really find ways to understand stuff, to understand things at school or whatever I'm doing something at home. uh,
Okay.
that that totally changed the game for me because I was understanding more about it and reading and doing more research about it.
Okay. Now, see that's interesting because what I'm hearing is a transformation from someone who was growing up and feeling that they were unable to learn or that they were less capable of learning. And then suddenly, when you realize that this is just a symptom that you're dealing with, you actually threw yourself more into learning, into doing research than before because you didn't see yourself as someone who was incapable of learning, but simply someone who the modality, if you will, the manner in which you learned was different, but you were not unable to learn. You just simply had challenges when it came to learning, which made you, in fact, want to learn even more.
Yes, and unfortunately, I grew up. I think many of us grew up like I'm not blaming teachers or whatever. It's just like most of the teachers they only know one way to teach kids,
Ah,
and I never
yes,
had that
yes,
myself.
yes.
And I would say that maybe it was worse because I grew up in Mexico.
Mm,
It's a different kind of culture and a different structure of the educational system. Uh, many times teachers were telling to my parents, basically they didn't use this word, but basically they were saying that I was stupid, that I wasn't paying attention,
mm,
that I wasn't
yes,
focused at all.
yes.
Without even thinking, oh, there might be something wrong mentally with him. They
Right.
never say something like that.
Right, right, and that's interesting. And I find, as I mentioned earlier, we have adopted these new terms of neurotypical and neurodivergent. The public awareness is that it's not that the standard way, the way most people are, is not the only way. It's not the only way to think. It's not the only way to be. It's not the only way to learn. And by just being open to the fact that people have different ways of learning, that their brains function in different ways, a teacher's not going to say, well, this kid isn't keeping up with all the rest of the kids. There must be something wrong with them. Maybe they're just not capable. Maybe they're of limit. It's like, oh, maybe I need to find out what is the issue with this child so that I can figure out as a teacher, or maybe I need to get assistance into dealing with helping this kid. Because it's not, the teacher's not here to do anything. At least this is me talking about myself and my views of education. The teacher is there for the student. The student is not there to pass the tests. The student is
Yeah.
not there to please the teachers. The teacher is there to give each student whatever they need to be the best that they can, to cultivate their mind and to grasp the knowledge as best as they can. If they can't learn it in the way that other students can, then we need to find the way that works for that individual student.
Yes, exactly. And it's ironic because I'm working with neurodivergent kids that are autistic or nonverbal,
Mm,
and I have a lot of compassion for these kids because I know how they feel.
mm,
Because I have that saying, I wish that my teachers they would have that compassion towards me or
yes,
other kids,
yes.
and that's why without even thinking, suddenly I'm working with these kids,
Mm, mm.
and sometimes many times I see myself in them,
Wow,
but now I
wow.
know that I need to do my best to try to understand these
Yes.
kids, even if they're not verbal.
Mm, mm. Uh,
And I was something very interesting, about you know being a failure. I felt all my life like this, but now I know that it was fear.
mm,
It was fear for me. I'm still dealing with that a little bit because I
mm.
tried many times in my life.
Yes.
Like I was excited, for example, when I was in my teen years. Oh, I want to be a mechanic. I want to be this and that. But when it was hard for me to even the first week or whatever I was learning, it was very difficult, and I didn't get any support. That's when I give up,
Ah.
and I think that makes that was doing a path
Mm.
because I um after that I was avoiding a lot of things to do because of what is the point?
Right. Who wants to continue to experience this failure, this disappointment, this trying and not succeeding and being let down, the looks on people's faces, the expectations being, and then you just say, you know what? I'm not even going to go there.
Yes,
Wow, wow. And it's interesting. You mentioned fear, and that is, I think, one of the greatest limiting factors when it comes to confronting failure. As you know, I have failure in my podcast stand for an acronym which is First Attempts in Learning Using Real Experience. And it's very interesting that you talk about, when you came to the United States and you got the diagnosis, it was ADHD, and suddenly you saw, wait a minute, this is a thing. It's not that I'm broken. It's not that something's wrong with me. It's just I have a slightly different functioning brain. And then you got into learning.
Yes, yes, and like I told you before, I'm still learning how to deal with that. Like I said before, it's part of my life, and I think uh, I need to accept it and learn from that. And and that's a very interesting thing that my therapist told me, but I never thought about this before until my therapist said this to me. You know, you're telling me that all your life you're feeling like a failure, like no self-worth, like you are nobody, no? But she said to me, you've been with me for a year or whatever, and you every time you speak out about your coworkers or people in general, you always have a really good compassion with people. And this is very interesting because she said to me, you might think that like you're not smart or whatever, but many times being compassionate, being nice with people, and trying to build community, that's a really good asset, and you don't see that in yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. And that is, it's so, thank you for sharing that, Yvonne, because that's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I want to have these conversations. I want people to understand that they, like I say, I want to demystify and destigmatize the conversation around failure. Because so often we don't see the good things, the highlights, the benefits of our own selves. Because all we see is the failures. All we see is the thing we thought we were supposed to be and didn't do, the expectations we had and we didn't accomplish them. And that's the narrative that keeps playing. That's the tape loop that we keep repeating in our head rather than seeing all of the positive and the beneficial things. For
Mhm.
example, you say that you're working with neurodivergent kids. Well, tell us, say a little bit more about this. Tell us what sort of work that is and how you came to be doing that.
I was, I came from working in an after-school program in San Francisco, California, with in a nonprofit, and I was doing that, and I was working with newcomers, teenagers who come from Mexico, Guatemala, and other countries, and teaching them how to deal with whatever's going on in the U.S. And suddenly, I'm in working with the after-school program, and I said,
Huh.
"Wow, I love this! I love to work with kids." And when I came to Colorado Springs, I find a job in a place where more kids about behavior, autistic, but other teenagers with behavior issues. Like they only wait in the moment to hit you to do something to you. Because the whole system, being in the foster care and they don't believe in adults. You know.
Right.
Uh, and after that, a good friend from there, he was getting tired of that place because the administration or whatever, and he went to another place, a school, and he invited me there.
Ah.
And it's more about kids with neurodivergent issues, autistic and nonverbal, like I said before. And that's how I started with working with those kids. And I know I've been having it's I would say it's no easy job
Oh, no, I don't
because
imagine that it is.
I know it's you're autistic. A noise can trigger you, and
Yes.
whoever's in front of you, you're gonna start punching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it happened to me once in a while. It's part of the job. But like I tell
Yes.
people, don't take it personally.
Right.
You need to
Right.
understand this, and
Yeah.
and that's I feel compassion with for this kid and the families
Yes.
because it's not easy.
Yes. And here's the thing that is so fascinating, and in light of what you shared, that your therapist shared and revealed with you and to you about yourself. There are people who have degrees. They have a master of socials work. They've got a bachelor's degree in psychology or whatever have you. But what you have, that compassion, which you can't get that sitting in a classroom. You can't get that by reading a bunch of books or going to a lecture. And in many ways, that qualifies you much more than these people who have the scholastic, the academic background. Because some of them, they're like the second time or the third time they get hit in the face by an autistic kid, they're like, you know what, I'm out of here. You can't pay me enough for this. But because you understand that this person, they're just different. This is not, like you said, it's not personal. They're not attacking me. This is just the way they react to that input, that stimuli, and their brains just don't function the same. You know.
Yes.
So I understand that. And here's the thing. So the experiences and the challenges that you faced as a younger person growing up and no one understanding, was that failure? Or was that simply life's preparation, if you will, plowing the furrows to plant the seeds of compassion that have sprouted and given fruit to now your ability to work with these neurodivergent kids in a way that people who come from the classroom alone aren't even as capable as you are of dealing with them?
Months ago, I don't know if you remember this, but I posted a video. I was driving to work, and I don't know, it was a aha moment or whatever. Suddenly, I realized that whatever was happening with me in the past, including my learning disability, it was a learning process.
Yes.
All that was a learning
Yes.
of dealing with my condition. And I say to myself, now I got it.
Ha.
Now I get this.
Ha.
Now I see that
Okay.
I can help these kids. I can help these people because now I'm understanding more myself. And in a way, it sounds ironic, but in a way, maybe I'm glad that I have ADHD
Yes.
because I am understanding myself and I can understand other people. That's
Yes.
why I get so upset when somebody use very bad words describing these kids.
Yes.
I get
Yes.
very, very upset
Yes.
when they call this kid, oh, he's a stupid, he's a retarded. I can get
Yeah.
into a fight, Corner, sometimes when I
Yeah.
hear
No, I
the
imagine.
word. When I hear the word, I said, "Don't ever say
Yes.
that."
Yes. Somebody might get hit, and it's not going to be because of a loud noise stimulus.
Exactly. Yeah.
But see that is, as you sharing this, I was thinking, yeah, is it suffering or is it preparation? Because I've shared on this podcast and I've shared on Facebook. After September 11th, I had a bunch of really bad things happen that year. I lost my grandson, not my grandson, my godson. I don't have any children myself. I lost my job. I was 5 blocks away from the South Tower when it collapsed, and then I had, let's just say, I had an issue with a friend of mine and a couple, and bad choices were made, and there were repercussions from that, and all of that led to a depression that lasted for almost 3 years, to the point where I was incapacitated. If it wasn't for my sister's house in Long Island and my ability to live in the basement, I mean, I couldn't work, I couldn't function. There were some weeks where I could barely move. I just rotated on the futon so that I wouldn't get bed sores for like a week. I didn't get up, I didn't take a shower, I didn't change my clothes. But since then, I have so much understanding and compassion for people who have and are experiencing depression. And I'll be honest with you, before then, I was one of those people when, if you said someone was having depression, like, well, why don't they just snap out of it? Come on, get over yourself. Just suck it up. What's the matter with you? Life is tough. Stiff upper lip. Because I didn't understand what depression was. And I thought that I knew, and I was judging these people rather than having compassion for them. And then in 2008, a good friend of mine that I've known since high school was experiencing his own depression. I flew out to San Francisco for a week. I stayed at his house for 8 days. In those 8 days, he was able to come out of his bedroom a total of maybe 2.5 hours of those entire 8 days. I never knocked on the door. I never said, hey, man, what's going on? When are you going to get up? Because I knew there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could say. I was there for whatever moments, however much time he was able to come out and to talk with me. Because that's all that there was to offer it. He just have to go through its course. And now he's out of it. He's doing much, much, much better. But I could have looked at those 3 years as lost years. I lost the ability. I could have been making money. I could have been working. I fell behind the times. I now have to play catch up. But as you're sharing, I don't see that as something I suffered. I experienced depression so that I could have a compassion. And it's not just compassion for people who've experienced depression, just my compassion for all people in general, for whatever they're experiencing. because I know what it is to be in a situation now where people would judge me, where people wouldn't understand me, where people couldn't figure it out and say, what the hell's wrong with him? How come he
Yeah.
just doesn't get bust ass and get out there and go back to work, man? Why are you sitting around feeling sorry for yourself? And that's, as we know, that's not what depression is at all. So the things we experience in our life that, of course, nobody celebrates depression while they're in the experience of it. You weren't celebrating your ADHD as a kid struggling in school when nobody understood what was going on. But now, in retrospect, looking back at it and seeing, oh, that's what that was, and that's what this is. And now going forward, when you deal with new people, when you deal with the neurodivergent kids and the nonverbal kids, you're saying, okay, I know what it is to be different and to have people not understand me. So just the way that I deal with you is different than maybe neurotypicals who are well intentioned and they're here to help, but they don't have that insight, that been there, done that gives you an understanding that only comes from experience.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, my title is paraprofessional, that you are supporting the teachers,
Yes.
in the classrooms. And I've been seeing a lot of people who go there working as a professional, paraprofessional, and they say, "Oh, I have a master's degree in social work. I have a master's degree or BA or whatever." And in the beginning, I was feeling bad, because, oh, I don't have a title or whatever. But most of those people, like you said, if something happened to them, like a kid that scratched them or hit them, they're gone without even saying anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happens a lot of times.
They don't even say goodbye.
No, then suddenly, oh, where's this? Well, you know, when was last time you saw Betty or whatever, for example?
Right.
Oh, that was last week, and we don't know anything about her. They couldn't deal with that kind of kids because, like you say, they have the title, they have the papers, but they don't have the experience and they don't know how to deal with
Yes.
these kids.
Yes. Yes. Because they're not prepared for what the job really is. They think that their classroom experience and their academic experience and their title, oh, that prepares me. I have the credentials. It doesn't take credentials. It takes
Yeah,
so much. Now, if you have the experience and the compassion, I'm sure that the credentials might help. But as you see from your experience, it's not requirement. And in fact, some ways it gets in the way.
and I want to say something to you too. Talking about this ADHD condition and being a man. You know that I keep talking about myself, men issues, and about that men are allowed to have emotions and cry.
Yes.
I think I would talk about my experience. Maybe other men can think the same. I don't know. That it's even hard when you are a man. I believe myself. That's what I feel. I think myself that if you have this kind of condition, I think it can be a little worse for you to express
Yes.
because you already are
Yes.
conditioned as a man to
Yes.
no show that, to no show
Yes.
emotions, and to say, "Oh, I had this," and
Yes.
and I keep talking about mental health because ADHD is considered a mental health issue.
Yes. Yes. And that
Before,
means that you're lesser than, you're weak, you're deficient, you're broken, there's something wrong with you, and you're supposed to be the strong guy who can take care of everything, the Chuck Norris, the John Wick. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to fail, you're not supposed to be weak. And all the stuff that's put upon us on men that yeah, and I want to celebrate you, my brother, seriously. And I have done that in the comments in the
Yeah, I
CBX
know.
Nation group. And I want to do that here inside the podcast. I want to celebrate you for bringing that out, for bringing out things like for addressing the topic of imposter syndrome, for addressing the fact that men need to feel comfortable. This is something see, guys don't think about. When you shared that post about men need to be comfortable with taking compliments. Now you think,
Yes.
wait a minute, that doesn't make you weak, but how uncomfortable is it for a guy to say, "Hey man, you're looking good," or "Hey man, that's a nice suit," or "Hey man, you look like you've been, I see your workouts coming through. You lost a few pounds," and guys get all weird about that.
Oh,
It's
yes,
crazy.
yes, yes. You know, and I think that the new generation of men, also women, they need to understand that.
Yes.
uh, because I would say that many women also they keep uh, teaching to their men kids, don't do that,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
don't
Yes.
cry for insignificant things, whatever.
Yes.
No, you
And
know,
not
we
just the
need to.
mothers, it's the women who are the partners of the straight men, that they gives the signals. Oh, I won't accept you if you show weakness. I won't accept you if you cry. I won't accept you if you show emotions. I won't accept you if you show fear. And so guys want to please the woman, want to keep having the women being with them, and so they learn to shut down and turn off. And oh, you're gonna let him how. Let's just get real, my brother, since we're talking about it. How many of our brothers out there are dead because some guy said something and some woman said, "You're going to let him talk to you like that?"
Hmm.
And he ends up knowing he should have walked away, ends up getting into a confrontation and losing his life over some nonsense.
Yeah, and also see that like a big issue with whatever is going on in the world right now. Mm, who is starting conflicts? In other words, a man.
Yes. Yes.
Why? Because they don't know. They never grew up learning how to control their emotions. They also, I feel like they always thinking like power makes you
Yes.
a real man.
Yes. Yes.
That's my
I mean,
perspective on that.
let's look at the biggest cause of conflict. I mean, you look at whether it's Kim Jong Un or whether it's Vladimir Putin, or Ayatollah Khamenei. A lot of it is just masculine insecurity.
Yeah,
It's whether it's Iran saying, "Oh, we're not going to take this crap from Israel. We're not going to take this crap from the United States." Whether it's Vladimir Putin wanting to put the Soviet Union back together to get back to the glorious days of Mother Russia, and or Kim Jong Un, just wanting to prove that Korea is, he's a god and Korea is the superior. And it's nonsense. It's nonsense. If they would say, you know what, I'm the leader of my nation. Am I doing what's best for my people?
yeah,
That should be my first priority. The North Korea is starving. The whole nation is starving to death because Kim Jong Un wants to posture and pose like he's a super guy, rather than taking care of the North Koreans. And there's South Korea, same subcontinent, just separated by a border. They're doing fine, okay? Because the people who are the leaders of that country are not caught up in this mental masculine madness.
yeah. And we're going back to mental health is a big thing,
Yes, yes.
and we don't talk much about that.
No, as you said, because oh man, you're not supposed to talk about that. Well, I'm not crazy. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. And look, if men don't want to check out their physical healths, and maybe this is TMI to my listening audience here, but in the past half of a year since January, this is July of 2024 as we're making this recording. I have gotten a new primary care physician in January. I have had a MRI. I've had my liver, my kidneys, my gallbladder. I've gotten a new nephrologist, checked out my kidneys, had blood tests. I've had a virtual colonoscopy and an actual colonoscopy. They removed a few polyps. And, men and colonoscopies, oh my God, they got to go there and whatever. It's like, you know what? I got it all checked out. Like I was joking as they're wheeling me into the colonoscopy. I says, "Hey, I feel like I'm NASCAR because I'm on wheels and there's four people and they're putting me up on the lift." I said, "Could you check the oil and rotate the tires while I'm up here?" Because I want it all checked out. And as you know, as the founder of the CBX Nation, our guy Clark Bartram, who's
Yeah.
been a fitness model since he was in his 20s. He is now 60 as of last year, and shortly after his 60th birthday, he discovered that he had prostate cancer. And I remember he shared live as he's sitting there in front of the laptop getting the diagnosis
Mhm.
from his doctor. And most men would have been devastated by this. They would have been crushed. And instead, he was like, okay, you know what? My mission has always been to bring the word of health to men over 50. And so he was actually energized. And he's sharing his whole journey and where he's going to get his blood work and as he's traveling and all the tests. And he's like, I am in charge. The doctors and the technologists, they're on my team, but it's my body, it's my health, and he always has check it like a man. thing. He's got T-shirts and he's like, guys, go get it. Check your PSAs, get your prostate checked out, get your colonoscopy, man. Don't sit around and wait, okay? Because if you
Yeah.
catch it in time, it's treatable. But if you sit around here because I don't want anybody sticking a camera up my butt and all this kind of nonsense, it's like, okay, so you would rather die. You would rather die than check out your health. That's it, because you're squeamish about what a man's supposed to. You know what? You know the kind of man I want to be? The kind of man that's still alive. That's the kind of man I want to be. That's alive and healthy. And whatever I got to do to maintain that health, I'm going to do it.
And a lot of people, they don't think like it's not just for you.
Ah, talk
It's for
about
the
it.
people around you.
Yes.
It's about your mom and dad are still living, your uncle,
Yes.
your kids.
Yeah. And speaking of which, bring this into conversation. You are a father.
Yes, yeah.
So how many children do you have?
I have two. I have a daughter. Wow, she's gonna be 17 very
Wow.
soon, and I
Boy, oh
have a
boy.
little boy that he's 7.
Okay. Okay. So as you're saying, your health is not just about you. Your health is to make sure that you get to see your son graduate from high school. You get to see your daughter, should the day come, walk down the aisle, and maybe you get to become a grandfather. So it isn't just you. It's about you. It's about your wife. It's about everybody. And this is the thing. And you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. I'd like you to speak more about this. You mentioned community. And inside the CBX Nation, we have the 5 principles that we live by, which is mindset, meals, movement, community, and integrity. And I have you in this conversation because you are a gentleman to me who always lives inside your integrity. You walk your talk, you live your truth, and you speak on issues that some guys would be squeamishly. There's a lot of guys in the group, and I'm not downing anybody or dragging anybody, but there are guys in the group. They'll show up and show you their workout. They'll show how many pounds they're lifting or how rigorous a workout they're doing. But are they going to talk about the real stuff that has nothing to do with how many reps or how many sets or how many pounds? Are they going to talk about the fear? Are they going to talk about the uncertainty? Are they going to talk about the just the issues we deal? Are they going to talk about mental health? Are they going to talk about anxiety? Are they going to talk about dealing with accepting your emotions, positive and negative, about learning to accept a compliment? And
Yes.
you always bring these things as difficult, and you don't sit here and pretend like it's easy for you.
Oh
You
no.
acknowledge that it's difficult things to confront. And that is what I find so admirable. That is why I've invited you here on this conversation. I wanted
Thank
to
you.
have this thing because you go there in places that, as you said, we as men, particularly men over 50, because we are the ones who are raising the next generations of men. Children learn by observation and imitation. They become what they see. Okay? If they see us behaving the way our grandfathers behaved, that's the way they're going to behave. They have to see the men in their lives behaving as a new model of men. And inside the CBX Nation, we have what we call maximized masculinity as opposed to toxic masculinity. Because as Clark
Yes.
points out, there's nothing wrong with masculinity. The problem is the toxic. So if we want to throw out the toxic and keep the masculine, what kind of masculine are we becoming? And so what is it to be a maximized man? We acknowledge that we have emotions. We acknowledge that we need community. Where nobody is here. It's not Rocky, it's not Rambo, it's not John Wick. No solo, you can't do it alone. And you talk
Yeah.
about community, and I know that's very important. So I'd like you to just share about community, about the community building that you're doing, and about the significance and importance that community plays in your life.
Like I said in the beginning, everything started like thinking about making a journal. And I was telling and I said myself, just talking about that in the beginning and keeping the videos to myself to reflect later, that was already helping me. And that's when I say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to share it. You know, and for me, it doesn't matter if one or two people are listening.
Right.
And I have some people who say, oh, I was waiting for a video like this, and that's made me so happy because I'm not the only one feeling this way, and that's how you start community, expressing yourself, and I love it. I love it. I love to be able to talk about this. But the ironic or funny thing is that before I decide I took the course, I would say, to start making videos, I was totally an introvert. Before that, you wouldn't see me expressing myself, especially in video.
Yeah.
Even meeting new people on the street, on the coffee shop, whatever. I wasn't the kind of guy, hey, how you doing?
Right.
How's your
Right.
day? And suddenly I start saying good morning, and I start, even
Hmm.
at the gym. I was surprised for myself the other day. I went to the gym and I was observing this guy who was doing a certain kind of exercise routine. And I asked him,
Hmm.
can you teach me? And he was really nice and all that. And later that day, I said, oh, wow, you were brave enough just to go and do that. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that's maybe that's why I start getting more confident making the videos and be less introvert and speak out.
Okay.
And for me, community is always, we need each other.
Yes.
No matter your ethnicity, no matter your skin color, no matter where you are from, we all want the same in life.
Yes.
Just to be happy and just to have a good connection with people, health, whatever, and have a good, yeah, just be good with everybody around you.
Yeah. And it's interesting you share the transformation in you since you went from a private journal to sharing it, and I have seen the change in you from the first videos you were putting in the men's group, which it's a private Facebook group, and it was very obvious that you were not comfortable in front of the camera, but you did
Yes.
it anyway.
Hmm.
And I when you first started, you would sometimes you would private message me in Facebook Messenger and say, you check this out. What do you think of this? And now you're just like, boom, here's it. And again, you're not just like, hey, here I am, I'm a celebrity, and I'm on reality TV, and the camera's falling around, but you're more yourself. Okay, you're more comfortable. You're like, okay, here's the camera, and I'm going to talk to you because this is what I'm going to do because I'm going to share of myself. And to see how, and especially what you said that really speaks to me, is that it doesn't matter that we're not viral on TikTok or having 100,000 followers. If there's one person out there that hears that message that you're sharing, to get that feedback from that one person that says, I was waiting, I was looking for, I didn't even know this was the message I needed to hear until I saw your video. And thank you for sharing that. And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
It's the same way that I feel myself when I listen to you. For example, you have a very deep thoughts and ideas, and I think you really express very well. And I identify with you a lot, whatever you're saying. And I think that should be the purpose. It's just to be one or two person are listening and they identify with you, they can share your
Yes.
message.
Yes.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yes. It's thank you for sharing that, and as I've shared in the past in various channels. In my 20s, I was living on the Jersey Shore trying to be a rock and roll musician. As I like to joke, I didn't grow this long hair to do computers on Wall Street. And I've been an IT professional for literally for half of my life at this point since I was 32, and now I'm 63. Shortly before she passed, I was living with my mom for the last 3 or 4 years of her life, and we'd have conversations almost every day. And one night she said to me, Cornell, your gift has always been communication. Now, I've always been a very intelligent kid, and learning always came easy to me. And I thought, let's just be honest, as a black child born in 1960s in America, I thought my mission for my family was supposed to be the one who went to school and got the degree and became a doctor or an engineer or something like that to make the family proud. So I felt when I was compelled to move down and give everything and up and go to Jersey and try to be a musician, I thought I was disappointing my family. I thought I was letting my family down, and I always wanted to make my mother proud, and I just was wondering, even at the time was in my late 50s, and thinking, I hope that now that I've done the thing and I got to the point I was able to co-sign the mortgage for my sister's house in Long Island, which she has to this day, And she says, no, your gift has always been to communicate. And I thought, well, and I said to her, I said, well, I always thought I was supposed to be the one to go to college or something. He says, well, no, here's the thing, Cornell, you have always been smart. And you have always been able to do anything you put your mind to, but your gift has always been communication. And that really surprised me, and it struck me. In a lot of ways, it was such a fulfilling confirmation to know that I had not disappointed her. And I expressed I was kind of surprised, and she kind of chuckled a little bit, and she says, Cornell, I've watched you become you. What is it that you think I don't know about who you are? And my mother was a ordained Baptist evangelist, and she was always about spreading the message and spreading compassion. She worked with women who were incarcerated and who were about to be released to help them. First of all, you want to talk about mental, to first of all heal themselves inside, and think about it. You're a mother, and you've been locked up for something. Maybe you got involved in drugs or prostitution, whatever it was. How are your kids feeling? You're locked up. They need mom. You're behind bars. Now you're thinking about, how do I get out of here and try to rebuild my family? You got shame, you got fear, you've got doubt. And so she'd work to counsel them to be ready to come back outside. So talk about understanding the importance of both communication and community. And she's always been
Yes.
my hero and my example. So I get naturally the importance of building community and understanding. And as you shared, and it's something I definitely echo, I think the most important thing for us to do is to communicate a message of compassion and to build community, to be here for people, to let people know that they're not alone, to let people know that they're understood, that they're not the only one. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I want to talk about failure, especially, as you say, especially to men. I really think it's important for men. How many men go off the deep end, go ballistic, commit suicide, drink themselves to death because they failure, and they think, well, I suck, might as well, I'm worthless, I'm whatever. It's like, no, because you are never a failure. You experience failure, but you are who you are. You're a person worthy of compassion always. You might make mistakes, okay, but the failure does not define who you are. It simply defines what
Yes.
happened to you. And I think it's so important to share. And that's why I thank you for coming in and sharing. As you said, a lot of guys, they're not going to share that they've got ADHD, even if they're dealing with it. It's like, yeah, but I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to speak
Mhm.
publicly about that. What will people think about me?
Oh
You
yes,
know.
yeah, I totally. I stopped doing that. I stopped doing whatever everybody's thinking. That's one of the big things that I have learned. That's why I decided to start expressing myself. And you mentioned something like when your mom was telling you're a communicator and you want to do this. Unfortunately, many times other people have to tell you different.
Yes,
I
yes,
think they happen the same to me. You know, all my life thinking about I was a failure. Like I will never be successful. I will never be this, and that. And it has a lot to do with comparing with other people.
yes,
And my
yes.
biggest one is my sister and my brother.
Mm.
I'm the middle kid,
Oh,
and my brother, he's a anesthesiologist.
oh,
My sister, she's a psychologist.
wow, wow.
And I once in a while I still have that feeling, oh, I'm
Yeah,
comparing. They have a
yes.
degree, they have a career, and I don't.
Yes, yes, and
And
you're bracketed in the middle of these two, as far as society sees it, very
it's,
successful people.
yeah, that's a good point. Society, is and that's what I tell people. A paper doesn't make you better than everybody else.
Right,
Your
right.
kindness makes you better.
Yes, yes. And speaking about the difference between accomplishments and success, I spoke earlier about my depression. I did not speak very publicly about that until a few years ago, when within months of each other, Anthony Bourdain, the traveler and food critic, and Kate Spade
Yes.
both committed suicide.
Yes.
And I was not really much of a, I knew who they were, of course. It was kind of impossible not to, but I didn't really follow either of them so much. But in my Facebook feed, I saw that several friends and colleagues of mine were very shook by these deaths because it's sort of like, well, wait a minute. And as I say, they were young, healthy, rich, successful white people. Okay. And so I could see where people say, hold up a second. If they couldn't handle it with the money and the fame and world travelers and the reputation, and if they cashed in because it was too tough, what hope do I possibly have?
Yeah.
And I just decided, I made a post, and I think it's one of the posts I put on Facebook that got the most responses of anything I've ever posted. I shared about my depression. I says, look, those of you who know me, especially here on Facebook, you know me to be a very outgoing, bubbly, jovial kind of guy, always light-spirited, always whatever, but let me share this about you. And I says, I don't know that the reason that those two people took their own lives was because of depression. I'm just saying that I get it, and if I can understand some of you might be feeling some kind of way as being affected by this. And if all I can be is an ear, if you need to reach out to somebody, if you're feeling kind of troubled. And the two responses I had that I was so gratified that I chose to share that, because I didn't share that with any expectations. I was just like, it just felt appropriate. It's like, I should say something. I should let people know. See this guy? This guy was crippled with depression for 3 years, immobilized. And I know those of you who know me on Facebook and in real life can't even imagine this. Wait, that guy there? Come on. What? How could that even be? It's like, yeah, me. Couldn't get out of bed. If I went outside, I was so filled with paranoia and agoraphobia. Anytime anyone laughed, I thought they were reading my mind, and they were laughing at my shame and embarrassment of the things that I did. That finally lops me into that, infidelity and into that depression. And so two gentlemen responded, and one was coming in about it's psychiatry and the pharmaceuticals, and they can, and I was like, my guy, that's not the conversation I'm having. Maybe you feel some kind of way about prescription medication and whatever. That's a separate conversation. As you see in this thread, this is people talking about people who've experienced depression and how it's affected them. And then another guy was just obviously some kind of anger. And it turns out both of these gentlemen had their own experiences with depression. One of them, who was a guy that I knew, and I did some personal development training, a thing called Landmark Education, like personal transformation training. And he shared that look, sometimes the only thing that stopped me from jumping in front of the subway train was the thought of what that would do to my son if I did that. And that's the only thing that kept me here. And the gentleman who was going on about the pharmaceuticals, he was like, yeah, I still kind of deal with my depression. I kind of feel it's like the beast, and it's in a cage. And every day I just wrestle to keep the beast inside the cage. And the first gentleman who had the son, and he was saying, yeah, well, he's talking to me, saying, you're so brave to share about this. I was like, nah, my brother, you got it all wrong. Communication's easy for me. I've been a public speaker. I've been on stage since I was in the 4th grade. My joke is my only stage fright is I'm afraid I won't get my time on stage. I'm the guy you have to take the hook and pull me off of the stage. You know what I mean? I says, but you, my brother, just shared something. I'm sure that you've hardly ever shared that with anyone in your life. And you just shared that here in a public forum. You are the brave one. Okay. This is easy for me. I've been on a platform. In my 20s, I wrote a column in a newspaper for 5 years. This is nothing. This is falling out of bed for me. But if this motivated and moved and inspired you to share something, to face and confront something, because I said, trust me, brother, there's people reading this thread, just like you shared, that you shared what was a private journal, and you share it, and somebody watched it and says, I needed to hear that. I said, there's someone with a son or a daughter, there's someone who's struggling with depression. They need to read what you just shared. Not what I shared. They need to read what you shared, because that's going to make a difference in their life. And I saw that's why I shared that post. Not because of me, but because it got those two brothers, both of whom I knew, but I didn't know any of that about them. And at first they were coming with anger, and because again, with men, I don't want to face that. Why are you even making me go there? And it's like, nah, my brother, because I could have just said, look, shut up, get out of here. I don't want to. It's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Look beyond. Why has this triggered this response in them? Again, you bring up that word constantly, my brother, compassion. Be compassionate. Be patient, and pull out of them what is really happening here. Why are they so riled up about that? There's something in there, and just rather than confronting them, which is the typical guy thing to do. Don't you come here on my thread and bring this BS in here. It's like, nah, my brother, be compassionate. Understand and to pull that out of them. And I don't think I've ever done anything in social media that I am more proud of than having that conversation and getting those responses from those gentlemen. And because I'm sure that other people, and again, there's people who lurk, they'll read those threads, they'll never say anything, they'll never give a thumbs up, they'll never
Yes.
post a comment, but it affected their lives. And that's why, and talking about community, that's why, like you said, it doesn't make a difference if one person or 1,000 people watch your journals. The fact that you share it, because for that one guy that said, this is the thing I needed to see, you don't even know how many other people saw it and were affected by it. They just never made a comment.
Yes. And I'm gonna make a comment about compassion again. The first person you need to have compassion is yourself first. Otherwise, you won't be able to share that compassion, to be compassionate to other people. You need to start
Yes.
with you.
Yes.
That's why I feel like the things that you're learning is you're learning for yourself. But it doesn't make sense if you don't share that, if you don't share your process, whatever
Yes.
you're learning through your life, whatever obstacle you have in life, you have to
Yes.
share it. That way other people can really understand themselves a little more.
Yes. Definitely. And there's a saying, because I do workshops with aspiring entrepreneurs. I work with several not-for-profits like Harlem Business Alliance, and there's a saying: the teacher teaches what the teacher needs to learn.
Hmm.
you know. And so I started doing workshops for entrepreneurs because of the stuff I didn't understand when the subprime mortgage meltdown at the end of the aughts into 2010, which is when I had to go independent. I was unfortunate enough that when I went independent, I got 2 years of referrals before I ever had to do any marketing. And so I thought I was doing a successful business until the phone stopped ringing. And then I
Mm.
realized that I wasn't generating any leads. I didn't have a pipeline or a process. And I wasn't the one making the phones ring. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything about business. I know how to do the work, but I don't know how to get the
Yeah.
work. And that's business. So realizing that I had been working for 2 years under my own business brand and hadn't been doing it right, how many other people needed to know the very same thing? So as I was having, because first of all, I had to learn how to make the phone start ringing. And
Yeah.
as I was learning that, I figured, well, let me do workshops to share it, because if I'm not the only one that's in this experience, and other people are in the same thing. And as you say, share the process. And I say this to all the, I say, I'm not an expert, I'm not a millionaire, I'm just a little further along the road of this journey than you are. And that as you share that, that is so very true. And especially we as men need to hear this. The first person you need to have compassion for is yourself. And I didn't want to get into the details of it, but just very briefly, the thing that finally triggered me into my post September 11th depression was I had an affair with my best friend's wife at the time,
Mm.
and he found out about it, and it destroyed our friendship, and not just my friendship with him and his then wife, but his children were friends of mine. His sister and her children were friends of mine. His mother and stepfather were friends of mine, and all of those friendships gone forever because of
Yeah.
this infidelity. And it wasn't a simple thing. We had treats before. It's just this was the first time he wasn't involved. And I had counseled him the first time he invited me. And I was like, you sure you want to do this? Because this, come on, Greek tragedies have been written about this. Shakespeare wrote a lot about this stuff, man. It never works out well. You sure you want to do this? And sure as shooting, it took years to become a disaster, but it became a disaster. And the shame and the humiliation and the fact that I had betrayed, because it wasn't that I had sex with a woman who was married, because I'd had sex with her before, and before they were even married to each other, and it was at her invitation. It was because I betrayed the trust of a good friend. And I didn't even realize I was a person capable of such a thing. And it took
Mhm.
years to forgive myself because the shame of that I was someone who, because to me, trust is a very, very important thing. Somebody once described it, trust is like a sheet of paper that you get fresh out of the pack. Once you crumple it up, you can never smooth it out to be
Yeah.
as perfect as it was. You can get it to the point where you can use it and write it again, but the creases and the cracks, they're still going to be there. Once you've betrayed trust, it's almost impossible. It's very difficult to regain it and to lose all of those friendships. These were very, very important people to me. As I said, this was one of my three best friends at the time, and the only person that I knew since I was a teenager that I didn't either grow up with or go to high school with. So that was very devastating. And there's a part of me that says, should you even be talking about this inside the podcast? But I am here to just put it in. Again, I'm following your example, brother. You just put it out all on the line. It's like, you know what? We got to stop hiding, you know,
Yes.
because there's people out there listening to this podcast that might be the most significant thing about this podcast that they hear. If we carry the shame, and then when you said we got to have compassion for ourselves, like, yes, we also have to forgive ourselves, and especially as men, we carry a lot of guilt, we
Oh,
carry a lot
yes.
of shame, we carry and it's not just something like what I did. It's just like I failed my family, I didn't succeed, I didn't win, I didn't, I'm having trouble, paying the bills, I'm letting my
Yeah.
family down, I'm disappointing my parents, I'm not living up to my culture, whatever, all this crap that we put upon ourselves as men, that we carry on our backs, that literally till it bends us over. And we have to have that compassion and say, you know what, ease up on yourself. You're just a human being. And that's also why we need community. We need to talk to other men. And as you say, we need to admit when we're scared. We need to not
Yeah.
be afraid to cry. We need to not be afraid to laugh. We need to not be afraid to say, you know what, I'm just tired, bro. I'm just tired of this. And as we were talking about before the podcast started, sometimes you need the people to send the kids away so you can have
Yeah.
a little alone time with the old lady. You know what I mean? It's like we need that community. And
Yes,
it
and it's difficult as a parent that you have your kids are healthy and they're okay. That's why I say, when I see, I see some parents that they had two kids, and the two kids they're autistic. And I always ask my question when I see this family, when I see these parents, and I say, "Oh, holy crap!"
yeah.
And sometimes I complain about my little boy behavior because he's very energetic,
Yeah.
and that's when I start thinking myself,
Yeah.
I should be happy the way
Yes.
he's acting, he's healthy, and
Yes.
I'm not that situation like other people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the system doesn't help them after the fact that they get out of the school.
Right. Because it doesn't
That's
end
the
when
big
school
issue.
ends. It's for their whole life. And I have a good friend in who's a Facebook connection, and he posts regularly about it. He's got an adult autistic son. And sometimes he posts, is like, look, sometimes it's just. And I think a few years ago he lost his wife. So now he's a single father raising an adult autistic son who's a full grown physical body, but emotionally he's still very much a
Yeah,
young child, and he's got that tendency sometimes for those autistic outbursts, just because,
yeah.
and he's just like, I love my son, but sometimes it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and it's fortunate that he has that Facebook community to reach out. And sometimes he'll
Mhm.
just make a post. There's nothing. We're remote. You can't get to him. It's just for people to just give him love and to let him know he's not alone. And sometimes
Yeah.
that is all that it takes, is just to know. And especially as a man, for him, and as a father and as a widower, to just be able to say, I'm just tired, guys. I'm just tired right now. I'm gonna get up tomorrow and I'm gonna deal with it because I don't have any other choice. But I just gotta say, I can't pretend. I can't stiff upper lip it and square jaw it. I'm just tired. It's a lot. It's all I can do just to take the next step, to face the next day. And to be able to just acknowledge that. Just that. It's
Yeah.
not going to change anything. It's not going to put any extra calories in your bloodstream. It's not going to add any money to your bank account. But to not have to hold that in and pretend. And that is the importance of community. And that is why the videos that you share inside the CBX Nation and what you share inside of your podcast without a script, it's so important. And like you say, I hope that it goes viral. I hope that you suddenly become a viral influencer and you're able to make thousands of dollars from each podcast. But in the meantime, the importance of just sharing, and if you touch one life every now and again, that's why you do it. To have that compassion.
And I keep telling in those videos that I'm talking about two things most of the time. I'm not perfect. Because I know that some people might think like, oh, he thinks he's perfect because he's doing these videos and talking about this, I know. I'm pretty sure that some people might think that way. And another thing that I keep saying is, I'm not doing this for money. I'm just doing this to express whatever I'm feeling. But if someday, like you say, I can be successful
Yes.
and get the sponsors or whatever, that would be great. And you know
Yes.
why? Because I can use that money or whatever to even be able to help other people.
Yes.
Who knows? Maybe
Yes.
to help these kids with their parents are really struggling
Yes.
and they
Yes.
need a babysitter or they need some a long time with
Yes.
other kids.
Yes.
That would be wonderful for me if I can do something like that, help in that way.
Yes. It's so true. I definitely hear what you're saying because like I have a saying. I say, I may not do all the things I do for money, but I'm not allergic to money. you know.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine from the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, he had this expression that I remember to this day. He said, "You've got to do well before you can do good." Or the way I put it, there's no such thing as a broke philanthropist. In order to do charitable works, you have to have more than you need. And so, because
Yes.
a lot of people think, oh, you're just in it for the money. It's like, no, I'm not just in it for the money, but it takes money to make change.
Yeah.
I wish it didn't. Like I say, show me a world that doesn't take money, I'll be the first one to sign up. But
Yeah.
since we don't live in that world, I have to live in the world that we live in, and it does take money. But of course, as you're sharing, money or how much of it we have, that's not what defines our success. Those are two separate things, and it's important for us, particularly as men, to keep that separately because I am, since 2010, I've been my own business. Am I making what I made at my last full-time job of employment? No, I am not. Not even anywhere close. And there are times I get up and working from home and I feel like this is nuts. I was making a six-figure salary. I was able to fly out to California or to travel to Europe anytime I wanted to. And now, I got to save up to take the Metro North to go up to Poughkeepsie, to participate in a hackathon with a new colleague. It's like, but I am successful because my success and my bank balance are not the same thing. Now, of course, I'd like to be as successful in my bank balance
Yeah.
as I am in the rest of my life, and I'm working on that. But I do keep the two of them separated. And I see this, like, again, as you're saying, I don't do the failure guy for money. I don't even, publish every Tuesday as I'd like to. I thank you for coming here because now I have a new episode, and this is going to go up Tuesday. This is Saturday as we're recording this. And I'm going to publish this and broadcast it in a couple of days. I'll send you a link as soon as it's there. And I do this as you do your podcast because of the community that's out there, the community I know, and particularly the community I don't know. And this will be available wherever fine podcasts are sourced. You'll get it on Apple, you can get it on Amazon Audible, you can get it on Spotify, you can get it on iHeartRadio, and most of the places that take the Apple podcast feed, which is, of course, the number one source of podcasts on the planet. And I just want to thank you so much, Ivan. I never know anything, and as we were talking before this, I said, what, save it for the actual podcast because Years ago, I think in 2016, I did a radio interview with my first business coach. She had a thing on Blog Talk Radio. And we had a pre interview before the interview, and that it went great. The problem was that was the interview. Because then
Uh,
we started recording and we'd already talked it all out. And all the spontaneity and all the insights, it was gone. We'd already covered it. So that fell flat. So I've learned, and I'll be honest with you, I'm always scared before I start these podcasts. Like, what if it's not interesting? What if we don't
I
have anything to
was scared myself. I was feeling the same. I don't have nothing interesting to say.
But see, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Yvonne, and I've learned this. Everyone has something interesting to say. And that's why you notice when I started, I did not welcome you to the podcast. I welcomed you to the conversation.
Yeah.
Because these are not interviews. Because people say, why did you interview me? I'm not this or that. It's like, no, you're a person that has a lot to say, and I'm having a
Yeah.
conversation with you. You're someone that I know, and I've invited you because I know that there's stuff I know about you, and there's stuff that I don't know about you. And I want to have a conversation so I can discover that along with all of the podcast interviewers. And I say every one of these, I learn something new every day. Like I've known you for more than a year inside of CBX Nation. I didn't know you were a paraprofessional working with neurodivergent kids. As the kids say, I was today years old when I found that out. And I think that's amazing. And see, then these are things, and I wouldn't want to have known that before the conversation started, because then it wouldn't have been a revelation and an insight and something that I'm like, oh wow, that's so cool. And what I've learned, because this is season 2 of the Failure Guide podcast, starting here in 2024. Season 1 was 2019 to 2020, and it stopped. I did about 10, 11 episodes, and then the pandemic shutdown came down, and then my mom fell ill and died of cancer. And so then I picked it up again early this year. And listening back to the first set of podcasts is kind of painful because I especially the first 2 episodes, I did way too much talking and not enough listening. And so many times I hear myself interrupting my guests as they're saying something, and I'm just want to chime in. And I think I've learned to ask an interesting question, share some insights, and then to shut up and let you talk. And that's why you found that because I know you were thinking, I know you well enough to know you're thinking, what am I going to talk about for an hour? I don't have anything to talk about. I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you
Everybody,
do.
yeah, like you said, everybody has something to say.
Yes, yes. And I know how to have a conversation with you and how to just give you the space to feel comfortable enough to share and use. And as we could keep going, I like to tie it up in about an hour. I think this may end up being so far the longest one, or one of the longest ones that I've done. And I don't care. It's all great time. I just let the conversation go where it naturally goes. We might have to come back again and do another episode because I'm sure there's stuff we didn't even touch upon. I'm sure the issues with your being a parent and being a husband and all of that sort of stuff. We could go into all of that sort of stuff. But I just want to thank you so much, Yvonne, for joining us and sharing so honestly of yourself. And is there anything you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap it up and call it a conversation?
Well, no, thank you so much for having me, Cornell. I just want to say that I wish that more people are more willing to express themselves, like I said before, especially men, and that society can be much better if
Yes.
we are able to express a little more about our struggles and be
Right.
able to help other people.
Okay.
And like you say, I have my podcast now have a different name now because like you say, I saw it like a learning experience.
Hmm.
The first one is it was a podcast without a script, but I decided to stop for a while because a lot of things was going on with my life, and I just restarted, and now it's called the Balance Path,
Hmm.
and it's about the turns and twists about life itself,
Okay.
and I'm this time I'm doing hybrid.
Hmm.
That means that I'm gonna talk about my personal story, but also I will have conversations, like you told me,
Okay.
no
Okay.
interviews, conversations, maybe with people who are have autistic kids and how they
Ah.
dealing with that kind of situation, or co-workers.
Okay.
You've been working for me in this organization for a while. I want your perspective on
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And also, I used to work with immigrant teenagers,
Okay.
and I want to have conversation with them too about their personal experiences crossing the border. I can
Mm.
I can spend an hour with you about just talking about the conversations I have with these kids,
Yes.
and
Yes. Okay.
you might be crying.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I will look that and afterwards you're going to get me that information. I'm going to put the link to your new podcast in the show notes for when this goes up on Tuesday. And I just like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Ivan Castro, a very wonderful gentleman. And as I said, in the show notes, you're going to see the link to his podcast so that you can listen to what he's done in the past and where he's going. The Balanced Path is going to be called, and I'm looking very forward to it. Please show your love like you show your love here for the Failure Guy podcast. Show your love for the Balanced Path and for Ivan Castro. Thank you so much. I will see you again. I've been away for a couple of weeks. As you may notice in the CBX Nation, I've had some
yeah,
issues with my left hamstring. I think I'm going to be back up on Monday, hitting it back and getting regular week number 63 for me since I've been starting, and I've been facing my own failure because I was hitting it consistently for 62
yeah.
weeks, and it's just like, oh my God, I've fallen off the path, and I'm going through all of that. I failed, I suck. Everyone's looking for it to be. It's like, yeah, come on, Cornell. You mean you're a human being? You're 63 years old and you got a
Exactly.
little muscle aches? Take a break. This is not a contest. Listen to your body. You're not working to the point that you break down. You're working to build yourself up. And if your body's telling you need to take a break, take a break.
Take a break.
And ladies and gentlemen, this has been this episode of the Failure Guy podcast. Thank you all for watching and listening. And remember, as always, that failure is nothing more than the first attempts in learning using real experience. And remember, life is not a competition. Life is a race that you only race with yourself. And the only person that you have to compare yourself to is who you were the day before. Remember, never give up. Keep running. And until next time, stay real.